I'm going to tell you a couple of stories to start with, and they're very deliberate stories, actually, because I want to establish that champion-led is a core concept you can use in virtually any situation, with any team, anywhere. And so my first story is not about a business, although sport is a business. It's not traditionally understood as a business. So I'm going to tell you a first champion story from a sports team, just to bring out the concept. So I've been working with a professional football team for a couple of years now, soccer team, Michelle, and we had a great season last season. We were promoted and it was glorious and exciting. And this season has not been so easy. It's a higher division, it's tougher opponents, and we've been playing really well and not quite winning games. It's small margins, but we've been super unlucky and it hasn't really worked. And so the manager said to me, could you speak to the leaders? I said, sure. And so this is about a week ago. And I said, who are they? And he said, well, here are the 5 I recommend. And we did an online call, which is really cool with professional athletes, actually, because it's not their normal life to be on a Zoom call. And we talked about 4 things, and I'm deliberately sharing this because conceptually you should do this with every champion-led program. The questions are gloriously simple, really, and logical. First question, what's happening now? Second question, why is that? Third question, what could we do about it? And fourth question, what are you going to do about it? So gloriously logical of people who are influencers. So 5 members of the football team, all in the main, actually, all relatively senior. There was one real superstar who's a little bit younger, but effectively it's the more senior members. Doesn't always have to be when you're champion-led. In fact, Michelle's going to bring that to life and say, well, it probably shouldn't be. Anyone who's an influencer at any level. So Michelle and I are going to talk about that in a moment. So we got together and I asked those 4 questions. And to summarize the discussion, the view was we're starting slow. And the reason is we're just a bit tentative. You know, we're playing really good sides. Derby County, Bolton Wanderers, really good sides. And we're just a bit tentative. And that puts us on the wrong footing and gives us issues. So the solution, and I'm paraphrasing an amazing conversation with fabulous athletes. They said, we, the leaders, are going to inspire our colleagues to start fast. And that isn't just the manager saying start fast to everyone in the changing room, which you can easily do. It's we're going to have one-to-one conversations with our colleagues and inspire them and talk to them about why are we starting slow? Is it trepidation? What is it? So a little bit of coaching, really, one-to-one. And I'm a great believer in fate, but last night the team played and we scored after 3 minutes. Now that means we started great, right? Now, as it happens, the result was really good as well. We won the game 2-0. But almost, I wouldn't mind as long as we'd started great, and we clearly did. So there's an element where champions have driven change in a relatively short space of time by taking ownership of that change, the change required, understanding it, discussing what the solution might be, and then getting on with it, taking ownership and action. And so champion-led. So I'm hoping already, I'm starting to trigger in your mind, well, this can have a broad relevance and a broad opportunity to apply champion-led in a lot of different areas. So that's case study number 1. Case study number 2, and I'm delighted Amanda's on this call because Amanda was really central in making this work. We have the great pleasure of working with a company called Big Bus Tours. And about 10 years ago, starting to date us, we were asked to introduce a program that would be effective in 21 cities around the world. And that is in lots of continents. So we are talking about Dubai, Singapore, Australia, Paris, New York, London, Rome. So could we establish one way of customer hospitality and of selling? So those 2 different distinctions. So you create an amazing customer experience, customer hospitality, and you sell brilliantly well consistently. And what's been joyous over the last 10 years, and Amanda was absolutely central in this. So I'm going to come to you in a second, Amanda, just to bring this to life. We had champions who designed the program. And notice this is really important. They designed it. It's their language. We facilitated it. Amanda and I got them going and asked great questions, but they decided it was their language. Now, what happens then is you get ownership. So it's theirs. It's their baby. They made it, right? So they go back to their cities, and the one behind me here is in Singapore. And they live and breathe it. And the champion role, I'm going to simplify it into three things. Number one, use the material, the method, the skills that you have designed. Be a role model. So people look at you and go, oh, I could follow that. So number one, role model. Number two, educator. So consciously coaching, training, sharing, inspiring, motivating, consciously an educator. And number three, a challenger. So you don't just get into a flow and start to drift off. You continually look to improve. Now, what's been amazing with Winston, and he's a hero of mine in every sense. I've gone to Singapore 4 times since we introduced the training. And every time I go, Winston's there at the hub. He is 70 something. I think he's in his 80s. He keeps telling me, oh, no, I'm 71. Yeah, but you were 71 10 years ago. So he's a phenomenal individual and an incredible influencer of others. So the photograph's great because here are 2 relatively new. They've been around a few years now, but they're still relatively young and relatively new, influenced by Winston on a daily basis. And again, that is champion-led. So Amanda, I'd love you just to share some of your reflections on this wonderful journey we've had with Big Bus Tours.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, thank you. One of the things that I really loved is that each time we went to a city, following on from the rollout of a process, which, by the way, we didn't roll out, the supervisors of the Big Bus Tours, people, you know, the people with the tills and the people with the straps and the tills are outside these amazing places all over the world selling tickets. What was absolutely amazing is they'd always moved it on. So they'd always moved it on in some way. And I've just written this one down. Do you remember this one, Mark?
Oh, yes. 2 questions before map.
two questions before map. So old style, get the map out and say, right, you won't be wanting the green route, the red route, or the blue route. And you know, people are going, what? And yeah, so 2 questions before map, along the lines of what you're here for and what are the main things you're hoping to see. So actually the beauty about the Big Bus result is that they were the ones moving it through, and they were the ones deciding what the, you know, the little acronyms were going to be and so on and so forth. So that was particularly wonderful. So yeah, I think that's the key for me, is that actually as soon as possible as a leader in a business to get your teams ready to champion, to give them the training to help, and then leave them to it, that they're enabled, you know, leave them to it. They don't actually need anything you're doing, actually, cascading strategy, carrying out a change process, anything at all. It's enable, leave them to it, check in, maybe check with some of those process questions, what's happening, why is it happening, and so on. So yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Amanda. And in terms of what we're going to do today, I've got 2 distinct goals through sharing stories. And I've got at least 2 champions on this call that I'm going to come to, Andrew Hollybone, is clarify what it is. And so the storytelling is to do that, is to bring to life the concept and the possibility of championing. And the second is inspire you to go for it. Go for it, right? It works in any situation: football team, hospitality company, your business, your team, your organization. So it's a concept that you can apply. And Amanda said it beautifully, that as a leader, if you're in a leadership role, find your champions. Now, in this session, I am going to come the second to Michelle, because Michelle's been a champion and a lead champion, as indeed, Andrew, you have. And so I'm going to get an insight about, how does it feel to be given that responsibility by a business or by your line manager or whoever did it to be a champion? I'm also going to ask 3 questions of everyone on this call to self-reflect. that, okay, what are you going to do, basically? We'll come to those three questions later. So, Michelle, just on reflection, you were a champion a few years ago. You and I worked together first on a program. Just reflect, what are your insights about being a champion?
I think the most impactful thing for me being a champion was seeing how cross-functionally it really changed the business. And not only between departments, between production, sales, marketing, but between different levels of the business. The program really empowered people of all levels within the business to have a voice, to be leaders, to share their passion and their experience with their peers and with people up and down the chain in the company. I think it's a very unique program that allows a more junior member of your organization to get coaching and mentoring from people that they would not have been able to interact with if they had not been a part of this program. In that same regard, it's also inspiring for others to see their peers be leaders at every level of the business. And all that being said, I think it really showed me that it can break down certain silos that I think we all tend to have in our businesses and make people more open to speaking with each other and really empowering people to share their passion with their peers.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to come to you, Andrew, on this, because in the organization where you were champion and lead champion, this idea of cross-functional, I think it was called customer collaboration workshops, incredibly impactful, exactly as you've just said, Michelle. I'll stay with you, Michelle, because tell me about how you felt as a champion. And that could be right at the very start. You know, how did it feel to be given that opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Well, at the beginning of the program, nobody actually really was 100% clear on what being a champion was. So, and it's that way on purpose. It's to spark interest and to let people bring their own ideas into the program. So I was a bit trepidatious at first, to be perfectly honest with you. Because developing the program and knowing that I was going to share it with the broader organization, it's a lot of responsibility. But being able to help design the program, use the company's language, do it in a way that all of us in the room understood, we all really were proud of what we had done. And I think we wanted to make sure that we didn't have people doing this. Right? We wanted to be engaging and share our passion for what we were bringing to the table with everyone. So after the first session with the company, it was incredibly empowering. And as you know, Mark, directly after that first session, I pulled you aside and said, I want more of this.
I remember.
And that, yes, in the lobby of the hotel, I was like, I want more of this.
You're not leaving, Mark, until we've discussed this more. It was cool.
Exactly. And you had to catch a flight and yeah. Anyway, but that started my journey to becoming a lead champion, was that I realized that I enjoyed sharing techniques and teaching people so much that I created a path for myself to end up leading the program for the United States for the company. Yeah,
you became a head champion effectively, didn't you? With the responsibility for the whole of the US and develop new champions, all of that. So it's really cool. Yes. On reflection, and if you could wind the clock back and do some things again differently, as probably as a lead champion, actually, when you were in that bigger role, what in hindsight would you share with the rest of us in terms of getting things right or getting things wrong?
Yeah. So hopefully I did a lot of things right. But I think something that I would change as a lead champion is that I would stay more engaged with the most upper echelons of the company, with the C-suite, to make sure that the leaders of the company understood the importance of the program, that they were continuing to budget for the program, and that they were cascading the program down through all levels of the business. And just staying engaged with those folks, not being afraid to email them, to pick up the phone and talk to them, and make sure that it stayed integrated throughout the company's culture.
Yeah, and classically, because I was involved, what I saw from the outside in was this, oh, Michelle's doing that. So it, to an extent, and I don't want it to sound so critical, but if I'm one of the leaders, I go, oh, I don't have to do anything. Michelle's covered it. And of course you do. You have to still be a sponsor. You have to role model. You have to encourage. You have to invest, because every year when you were in that role, you had to go for budget. It was always a tough call and things like that. So this is really important. How, as a leader now, so you're in a different business now. You cover a number of the states in the US.
Yes.
As a leader, how are your behaviors as a leader shaped by what you learned as a champion?
I think the level of confidence that I have when I'm speaking to anyone in any function of any business, presentation skills, comfort level with my own expertise and myself, and being able to share that with others has been hugely impactful. In my life, one of the things that I use quite often in the business that I'm in now is high gain questions. I think that has been the most impactful module that is a part of this program that I use not only in my professional life, but in my personal life with friends and in coaching and mentoring experiences as well.
Thank you. One of the things I've seen in you, and I think it's been fed back to you by some of the leaders in your current business, is that when you stand up in front of a big audience, you hold that audience. You kind of come to life. So again, that's another reflection, isn't it? That you have a presence at a different level.
Yes, awesome. I was never able to do that before. So, and Amanda, thank you for helping me with that as well. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm going to encourage anyone to use chat to have any questions for Michelle, because you've already seen the level of passion and insight that you've shared, Michelle. And I'd love if there are any questions that we use chat to do that. And I'm going to come to Andrew. Andrew, what are your insights as someone who's been a champion? You were in the design team, and then you became the lead champion. What are your reflective insights on champion-led change?
Hi, Mark. Hi, all. I think there's a couple of bits, and look, Michelle and I seem to have had very similar experiences. So rather than duplicate, I think the couple of bits that stood out for me was at the very beginning, at that design stage, being able to have a stake in the game and being able to co-create. As it turned out, I don't think we knew the impact at the time that we were going to have, but as it turned out, that really helped embed it right from the beginning, all the content that we were talking about. So a lot more than a consultant coming in and telling us how, someone else does it. This was us. We road tested, we tore it apart. We, as you say, Mark, we challenged it. But that for me was one of the most important pieces. And 10 years on, I still had people new into the business who'd never been through any of the academy, still asking me about certain tools or acronyms that we developed. So I think the design and having that co-creation right at the beginning was really good. The other piece was the hardest thing for me was, again, standing up in front of a group of your peers, trying to train them, knowing that some of them are your line managers, some of them are more senior than you, had more experience. So that was terrifying initially. But I think what that gave me was a confidence in imperfection, because actually that imperfection of being coached and taught by your peers has a real authenticity about it. And actually, when it comes to challenge and, well, how have you used this? Oh, this won't work. Actually, you've got a myriad of examples of where it has worked, and you can come back to that. So yeah, confidence in imperfection and just delivering with authenticity rather than necessarily polish.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Here's a question from Charlotte, and it's to both of you. I'll start with you, Andrew, and then Michelle. How did it change your internal relationships being a champion?
I think I was certainly middle of the pack in terms of seniority, in terms of development, and again, I'd call that out. I think it's really good to have champions at entry point as well as senior leaders. I think that really helps. But certainly initially there was a massive amount of profile and personal benefit and development as being a champion, because it was seen throughout the business, not just within the sales community, but cross-functionally as well.
Thank you. Michelle?
I would definitely agree with Andrew. Being able to meet, work with, and interact with people in divisions that you typically would not as a salesperson gives you a bit of an expertise throughout the company, where you understand other processes and ways to improve the business by making better process throughout different departments.
Yeah, that's really cool. And a question that's come in is about, did you receive much resistance? And that's in particular peer group, isn't it? It's like, what resistance did you get?
I think at the beginning, there were quite a few hands crossed people in the room. Oh, I've been through sales training before. How can this be different? But by the end of the session, people actually started to see the value in the program. And it was very quickly after that people would reach out to the champion team. Can you read my smarter goal? Is this okay? Can you run a sales pitch with me and see if I'm doing it properly? So as long as you have engaged champions, especially after the initial rollout, who continue to remind their team about the program and what it can help them do, the resistance goes away very, very quickly.
Thank you. Chester, I'm going to come to you on this point, because as it happens, Chester and I are working at the moment in Phoenix, and Chester is leading the training. And in all honesty, Chester completely smashed it yesterday when we asked for feedback and said, what could we do better as trainers? So this is professional trainers rather than champions. What could we do better? Nothing, which was cool. It's what we call Torval and Dean. It's a perfect score. Unbelievably cool, however, and this is the big however. If you're saying, listen, let's now generate champions in your business, there's an immediate resistance. Oh, they can't be as good as Chester. There's no way that someone who's not a professional trainer can do it anywhere near as well. And there's innate resistance. Chester, I'd love to get your reflection on that. How do we help companies realize that imperfection is part of the wonderful journey that creates change? Confident imperfection. I love that, Andrew. What do you think, Chester?
Just to let you know, there's a bit of background noise because I'm at the airport, so we get blaring tannoy in the background. Could you repeat the question, Mark, in terms of how do we impart the confidence?
Yeah, I think it's also, though, when the professional trainer, whoever that is, delivers excellence, and then you say to the leaders of that business, you should be champion-led, that by nature won't be quite as perfect. How do you convince them that it's still the better way than just getting an external trainer to keep coming in?
I think there's a commercial element to it, and there's an element of the change consistently being in the business rather than waiting for a trainer to drop in sporadically. So you heard Michelle and Andrew talking about individuals coming up to them, asking for help in the moment. You can't do that if you've got an external agency that costs you further budget every time you want to dip into something, unless you've got some form of ongoing retainer. So that idea of in our business all the time is what we consistently get feedback from our clients that say, our people are the change agents. You were the catalyst that helped them become the change agents, but the change is always in our business. And therefore there's a commercial upside over time as well, that you're not having to constantly dip into a budget to train because your trainers are there. what I also would say is, as external trainers, we will listen and provide case studies based on what we hear, but we never really have 100% feel of what it is like to be in the business 24/7. And that's where the champions add significant value and real reality to the program, is that they absolutely understand all the pressures, and therefore the empathy is naturally there, that we can sense, but we can't always create 100% connection.
Thank you. It's very insightful. Thank you. I'm glad with Michelle and Andrew on the call, because the journey that both of you have gone through, and us as your partners, kind of brings to life what Chester just said. When we first started, in each case, it's a while back, isn't it? Some 10 years ago. It was very much we were leading and you were the second in command. So the session would be led by Amanda or myself or Chester, and you would be second in command. You'd say, I've got an example to bring to life what she just said. So you play second in command. You then play commander. That might be 3 months later, and we're second in command. We're backing up, we're coaching, we're encouraging. And then you get, in both your cases, you get to the stage where genuinely don't need us. Don't need us. There may be some imposter syndrome getting in the way, but the truth is, because we do it all the time, we go, well, what do you think about Michelle? Yeah, she doesn't need us. So, now it's different where our role then becomes mentor, probably. And certainly, Andrew, you and I, we touch base. You go, what do you think about this? A little bit of light touch mentoring, but no more physical training, really. It's not needed. It's embedded. You've got champions who live and breathe it, role model. You've got champions that are passionate and change it, make it better. We need a module on this. Let's design that. So I'm going to come back to you, Andrew, in that journey. When was the moment where you said to yourself, I can do this on my own?
It's a great question. It took a while. I think part of that journey, though, was understanding how I can best impart this knowledge. So for me, training can be standing up in front of a group of people staring at you, like in a classroom. Or actually, where we found more value from a champion-led perspective was actually coaching, using examples on a one-to-few basis, rather than being a teacher as such. And I think once I understood that, that made life a lot easier. Thinking about training, it wasn't such a big brick wall to get over. But I would just add to that it was a personal moment of pride through the program, and it must have taken about 6 or 7 years, I would guess. But running a 2-day session unsupported by you, Mark, and Amanda, that was a big change. That was a big change, and it showed that everything had come through. New champions were teaching things that they hadn't had a stake in co-creating, and it just felt like it was it gained real momentum.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I'm going to come to you, Michelle, same question. But before I do, what you triggered there, Andrew, is one of our colleagues based in Mexico, Jane Holstein. She has a lovely way when she's with clients, and the client says, oh, this is good training. And she goes, it's not training. It's not training, it's learning. And we have fun with it, because she does not let them get away with that. This is a learning program that is probably better not in the formal training. It's when you as a champion do a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-3, saying, let's just talk again about whatever that skill is. How's it going? What are the challenges? Let's remind ourselves. It's the nuance of that in the role, rather than the formal, that's a key part of being a champion of change. Michelle, when was the moment that you go, yep, I can go solo?
I think it was after leading a couple of modules in a day with you, Mark, and getting feedback from you. Hey, that was great, but to be even better next time. And getting that feedback and knowing that it was still okay, even if it wasn't perfect, gave me the confidence after a couple of sessions to say, you know what, it's okay if it's not perfect, but I'm doing the best I can, and I'm going to help people. So I think just having enough confidence in myself to just do it and to go for it and to give it a try. Just after being relatively successful in one module, I think was what gave me the confidence to go ahead and give it a try.
Yeah, this is so important, this, because it's a journey, right? It's a journey. And I love that it takes a while. But imperfect's really, really good. To Chester's point around, you know the challenges, you know the language, you know the company, you know the people, and therefore your voice is more powerful than an external voice. Now, if you understand that concept, imperfect internal voice is better than perfect external voice. Now, that is a very difficult thing to convince leaders of, who go, no, 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 we're just going to pay you to come in. I mean, and that's the way it works, right? No, no, no. We're not, if you're going to do it properly. Yeah, but if you want behavior change, you need your champions on a day-to-day basis, coaching, motivating, inspiring, reminding, role modeling. That's the change agent.
Mark, I actually have a bit of a build. That being said, is what I really realized after I started doing sessions on my own was that I didn't have to sound exactly like you, that I didn't have to be Mark Francis, that I could run it in my own way, that made sense with the group that I was working with. And that's, like you said, that is something that you would never be able to do. Not never, but it's different than you managing a module or a session with folks. Does that make sense?
Thank you, it does. And Amanda, you put in the chat, could you bring to life what you're saying in the chat, Amanda? It'd be really, really helpful on the question of confidence.
Yeah, as you've just, Andrew and Michelle have just described, the absolute gold dust with champion-led change, training, development, change processes, anything that you're trying to embed in a business, is that the internal champions are the ones who've got the examples. The internal champions are the ones who've gone so far down a process. The internal champions are the ones who've tried a new tool, a new way of working, questioning techniques, and can say, I tried this with X customer, I tried this internally, and I had a breakthrough. This is how it worked. So one of the first things that we now train, and actually it's probably in the last sort of 5 years or so, is storytelling. So to be able to tell as an ambassador of whatever the process is that you're trying to change, to be able to tell a story authentically, because it is authentic, it's way more authentic than us telling what's happened elsewhere, of what's happening in your business.
That's fabulous storytelling. And we talk about it a lot, as you say, fairly recently. It's a major focus, whether you're a champion or it's bringing to life any element of learning, that the story is resonates better than any style. And certainly if the alternative is a PowerPoint deck that will be forgotten pretty quickly, the story sometimes is never forgotten. So I'm going to ask the first of 3 questions to everyone on the call, and I'm going to give you 80 seconds to reflect. What change in your area of interest and passion, what change is needed? So that's question 1. You can see the other 2 questions, but the first question is, what do you need to change? Fundamentally, what do you need to inspire to change in the area of interest or passion that you have? And I'm going to give you 80 seconds. Of course, I'm going to try and change it through champions. But first, what is the specific change you need to inspire? And you've got 80 seconds with me not talking to reflect on that. That's a really cool question, isn't it? It's a very reflective question. Because in any situation, of course, there is change required. It's a human dynamic. So first of all, be clear what change is needed. And it's wonderfully logical, isn't it? It's where are we now? Where do we want to be? And what needs to change in order to get to that better place? It's effectively what our brains have just been reflecting. And so what is the change we want to inspire? The second question is, who could be champions for or with you in that journey? It's a very deliberate question, and I hope inspired by Andrew and Michelle in terms of all levels. If you get someone very junior with passion, they will influence incredibly. They will be an influencer in every sense. So it isn't just seniors. So the second question is, who could be the champions of that change for and or with you? And if there isn't a who, it's you. So there has to be a who. Okay, so I'm going to leave you again, 80 seconds. Who could be your champions? Now, there's always a danger when you come on a call like this and I know you, that I'm going to call you out to give feedback. So brace yourself if I already know you, because it's coming. I would like to ask Charlotte. Charlotte, you're head of a business now, and you were a wonderful champion in a previous life. Who's the who? And it, don't name names, but it's kind of what position are they in is what I'm interested in. Who could be your champion, Charlotte?
Okay, so I've got a very small team. There's 4 of us. So I've actually put down, I'm very much champion, the champion being leading the UK, but I've put all my team members actually, because I've got 2 account managers and I've got a technician. So I felt that we could all be we could all be champions.
And you can, and I'm so glad you share that, because, and it's not just about having a small team. The point is they can be champions of different things. So we work with a med tech company where they have clinical specialists. Well, they're going to champion clinical education as an example. And one of the sales people are going to be championing sales skills. So you can have everyone as a champion. And it's the concept, the very first story I told around a football team. In truth, as a sports coach, you really want everyone to be a leader. You want everyone to take a leadership role, even if you don't necessarily call that out. But in a small team, it makes sense to try and give everyone responsibility for the change. So just out of fascination, how would you introduce the concept? What initial thoughts do you have in terms of how you might introduce the concept?
So they need to know the purpose. What's it? Why am I introducing the importance of being a champion? So I would focus on the thing that comes to mind very much. It's the strength of influencing skills. And if they can, and how important that is, their hybrid sales specialists, of which there can be this focus on on selling and results and dealing with a long sales cycle and the challenges. But
Yeah.
really, I've even had conversations with them recently. Forget sales, it's about influencing. It's internal and external. And that's my big thing at the moment. And I think that's what I would focus on, because I think it's something that they can relate to, something that's inspiring, something that they know would benefit them. And then we could build on that. I
Love
feel
it.
it's very topical.
It is. Thank you. Yeah, love it. Thank you, Charlotte.
Hmm.
Now, I'm just going to check Philip. Are you still on the call, Philip Godson? Are you still on the call? You never know.
I am, Mark. Yes,
Awesome.
I am.
Philip, you're again a business leader. Who might be your champions? And of course, I know your team. Who might be some of the champions? I don't mean names. I mean positions, really.
Yeah, well, similar to Charlotte, I think, actually in all, they could all be champions in their own way, and opening it up to all of them on the team. But I've sort of thought about someone on the team who I believe that they're so. What I'm keen for them to do is just do more problem solving, where they have the answers themselves, but they come to me. They want that sort of answer validated, and actually, I know that they're so good at problem solving themselves that they could quite easily just cut me out of it and just go ahead, have the confidence, and crack on with the prospect or client. That's what I think.
Thank you, Philip. And yes, and there's a theme here about giving people specific champion responsibility, problem solving being the example, and give another champion a different responsibility. And we're big fans of that, rather than saying everyone's a champion, because then no one is really a champion in the sense of taking full ownership. So if you are having a number of champions, or indeed your whole team, be specific about what their role is as a champion, what they're looking to focus on and develop in everyone. Peter, I'm going to come to you because fascinatingly, again, you lead a business. And what's triggering for you? It's a slightly different question here in terms of champion-led. What's triggering for you in terms of this concept?
Well, number one, I'd like to know more about it, but I'm really interested in how this could be good for my members, because my business is a peer group of other CEOs and business leaders. So I've found it very interesting. And as I mentioned at the start, Mark, I was really looking at this where we can bring this into my group to get other business leaders to take it on board. So it's bringing to other business leaders an opportunity to become champion-led in their business and understand how it works.
Yeah, and it's why I'm so delighted that Michelle and Andrew could be with us, Peter, because I think unless you have someone who has experienced it, it's so easy just to present the concept and go, that's it. And it isn't. There's so many nuances about, so for example, playing back some of the things that were said by Michelle and Andrew, confident in perfection takes a while to accept. You don't put that in some sort of flyer about champion-led change. But if you've got someone who's experienced it and can bring it to life, so classically in a workshop with members, you bring someone who knows that and can enrich the conversation, tell stories, to Amanda's point, about how and who and when. Thank you, Peter.
No problem.
So I've got one more question for everyone. And that question is when. And I'll just put some context on that. Every organization, every team, every business, every family needs change. It's a constant, and it's part of being a human being. So when the change is big, important, significant, challenging, how can we lead change? And in our experience, champion-led it's not the only way to do it. It isn't. But to Andrew's point about, you have day-to-day change agents in your business, if they are within the business, they own that entire learning program, you've got a way better chance of sustaining the change. I'll say that again. You've got a way better chance of sustaining the change. So as it happens, Michelle was in a business that, Michelle, I think you left in 2019 or 2018, something like that. And when Michelle left, as the leader, the champion of the change, there was a big fall off on energy, activity, focus, which is not surprising, disappointing, but not surprising. And I'm going to show you the current champions. And 5 of them are new. Mike was a champion with Michelle. And I'm showing you because still alive, still happening. 10 years after it started, new champions, new energy, actually a new name, changed the name, changed the champions said, well, we don't want to call it Sales Academy. We want to call it Sales Mastery. Well, that's what you want. That's what we're going to call it. So I wanted to just inspire that to say, goodness me, if you can establish, whether you're in Andrew's business, and Andrew's moved on from his business, the business we worked as champion, and it's still living and breathing, and it is in Michelle's old business too. So I wanted to inspire you to say, what's stopping you getting on with it now, in all honesty? And therefore, the final question to answer to yourself, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds, is when. Okay, when are you going to do it? Charlotte, when are you going to get that team together and say you're all champions? Okay, so final question is when, and then I'm going to come back to Amanda just for some final insights about this glorious thing called champion-led. The sort of what's stopping you getting on with it question, isn't it? Call to action. It's the right thing. Let's do it. So Amanda, some final thoughts and insights from you in terms of champion-led change.
Yeah, I think this choice of champions is an interesting question. So let's say you've got a big reorganization to do with the business of your organization, or let's say you are implementing a huge new system, finance system, something like that. Actually, when you're choosing who to train up as the champions of that change, don't just pick the ambassadors. So think about it's kind of the Goldilocks theory. We need to get something. We need to add into the equation people who are absolute ambassadors, maybe senior, maybe not so senior. The people who are totally against it, we use something called a stakeholder map, something that are totally some critics, because actually once persuaded and once on board, they will be the influencers. And then those people who are on the fence, yeah, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not a good idea. Let's think about that, because as soon as they are empowered to make the change and to lead the change through the business, they will be massive ambassadors.
Do you know, I forgive me for using this language, but it really triggered. It's massively important. If they are going to be troublemakers almost, they have a voice, they're important, they have significant impact. But if they're not part of the champion program, they'll be a real blocker. Get them in.
Yeah.
And it's way better to have them in the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. So I'm delighted we've got Andy Smith with us today. Andy's our business development lead. And Andy, I'd love to just get final thoughts from you.
Well, look, firstly, thank you very much to Mark, Michelle, Andrew, Amanda, Chester, Peter and Philip for your contributions and your stories there. as we went through. I think the whole subject there is just quite fascinating about that champion-led change, the importance of who's involved, even just touching on that end part about getting those troublemakers inside the tent is a really very valid part. Look, so from my phone, thanks very much for everyone joining. If anyone would like to discuss more about Uspire, about our coaching, our sales academy or network proposition, then do drop me an email, andy@theuspirepartnership.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Andy Smith at Uspire, and we can discuss both from a training perspective, but also look to engage more in champion-led organizational change as well. So thank you very much, Mark, for hosting that.
Great pleasure. Have a great day, everybody.
Cheerio now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.